Hello everyone and welcome back to the MedBoys channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how I scored a 515 plus on my MCAT in a matter of 55 days and how you can do the same. Let's go.
Let's quickly go over the resources that we use to study for the MCAT. So for the textbooks, we actually bought the Kaplan 7-book set, and we use that to study for everything except for cars and psych. To study for psych, we use the 86-page document, but you could also use the 100-page or the 300-page document made by MCAT Bros. You can find that on Reddit.
For cars practice, we use the Princeton Review workbook, the Exam Crackers book, and also a website called Jack Weston, which is a free website that has thousands of passages. For memorizing the actual content, we used an Enki deck made by Mile Down, which you can find on Reddit. We'll also link it below. And for the MCAT style questions, we actually used the AAMC Complete Bundle and UWorld, the 90-day subscription.
After I compiled all of my resources, I decided to take a diagnostic MCAT full length to assess, where I'm starting and what I need to focus on throughout my content review to actually bring my score up. I find that taking a diagnostic is really important because of those reasons, and also it's really satisfying when you see that score go up based on that hard work you put in throughout those months that you're studying. So I do recommend taking that full length. Some places where you can take it are Kaplan or any other third-party resource. I don't recommend wasting a valuable AAMC full length on it because I would save those for later. And just for context guys, I actually got a 504 on my first ever diagnostic MCAT, and you can see a breakdown of my score here.
Next, we need to establish a study plan. 55 days is approximately 2 months, and the study needs to be very focused during those 2 months. But at the same time, we also encourage you to take a break day. And we cannot stress this enough because studying so intensely can burn you out, and that could lead to bad results. So we definitely encourage you to take one break day per week, so that you don't burn out.
Now let's get into the overview of the 55 days. For the first month, you're going to be strictly doing content review. With that, you're going to be doing Enki for psychology, and you're also going to be doing the 3 daily cars passages. With that, you should throw in some UWorld whenever you have the time. For the next month, your emphasis should be placed on reviewing your weak areas and practicing as much as possible. Practicing is the most important part of the MCAT because even if you know the content, how do you know you're going to apply it if you haven't practiced? This is why I always say that the MCAT isn't a content test. It's really a test-taking test. And that's why it's so important to get in that practice. Now let's go more into detail about how you should be scheduling your review sessions.
First, we'll focus on biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, and physics. These account for 5 separate books of the Kaplan set, and each book has 12 chapters. Since we have about a month to finish all the content review, accounting for the break days, this means we only have 24 days to finish 60 chapters.
Okay.
If you do the math, this means that you'll have to do about 3 chapters per day. I know this may seem pretty overwhelming, but just remember that it's really important to make sure you go into very specific detail for each chapter when you do review it, because you may not have enough time to do a deep dive afterwards. So in total, we recommend spending about an hour per chapter per day, so this would account for 3 hours per day focusing on these chapters.
Instead of doing 3 chapters from the same textbook, I actually recommend you do 3 chapters from 3 different textbooks. This is a technique known as interleaving, and it helps you find the similarities and the differences between 2 different concepts. This will also help you in practice questions. For example, when you're doing UWorld, this will help you answer a question that isn't just based on one single concept. And additionally, doing 3 chapters from the same textbook can also be very exhausting, so switching it up may help increase your productivity as well.
The studying process for the psychology and sociology section is vastly different from the other sections. First of all, when you start off, you should assess how well you actually know these topics. If you've taken an intro psych course, if you're majoring in psychology, if you're minoring in psychology, the MCAT Bros condensed documents should be good enough for you because that's all they're really testing on the MCAT. But let's just say you have no experience in psychology at all, then I would say you should start off with a 300-page document, and this will give you enough detail on what you need to know for the MCAT. You should aim to get all the content done in 2 weeks by spending an hour a day going over the MCAT Bros document, and then spend the rest of the time of the 55 days doing Anki.
For the Anki flashcards, I would recommend doing about 200 cards per day to make sure that you're able to retain a lot more of that information that's necessary to do well on the psychology section. You might be wondering, this is a lot of cards, it's a lot of different terms to go through. But after some time, this will become like second nature to you. And I promise you that by doing this much Anki, your psychology score will go up like crazy. For me, my psychology score went from a 125 to a 131 because Anki helped me retain so much of that information that was crucial for answering a lot of those psychology questions.
Along with content review and psych review, make sure you're doing about 15 to 20 U-World questions every single day. And make sure that the U-World questions are related to the concept that you've learned that specific day. This will help you actually realize if you were able to understand the concept properly or not. U-World has this neat feature where you're able to pick the specific topic and pick the questions based on that. So make sure you use that.
For the cars section of the MCAT, we recommend checking out our How to Get a 130 Plus video, which we released a few months ago. But for the sake of this video, I'd say that consistency is the most important thing for cars. You need to do those 3 passages every single day, and you need to focus on accuracy, not timing. As you keep doing more practice and get better at cars, you will naturally get faster and be able to do more passages.
So now that you've finished your first month, the first thing you should do is celebrate. You did a great job getting through all the content, but the job isn't over. You're going to ramp up your intensity in terms of your work from here on out. And the way you're going to kick that off is to take another MCAT full length. And this is really just going to be to assess your progress compared to your diagnostic and also identify any other areas for improvement. For context, my score at this point was a 509 and I managed to significantly increase my score from there. So don't worry too much about what you get. It's more so just an idea of where you're at.
So here's a quick overview of what a typical study day would look like. You could start the day with an hour or so of cars, and then you start on with your 3 chapters. After the 3 chapters, you could do your psych review for 1 hour, and then end the day with your U-World questions. The practice for U-World questions should take an hour because you should be reviewing each answer after you do each question, and that would total up to about 7 hours.
Now that we've gone over the first month of the 55 days in quite some detail, let's move on to the second month. So during this month, you're going to be taking 4 full lengths. And since this is the last month of your study, these are going to be AAMC full lengths because these are the most representative. They're very, very close to the real thing, so make sure you take them seriously because they will show you what score you might actually get on the MCAT. Ideally, what you should be doing is taking the MCAT at the end of every week so that you've reviewed all you can, and then reviewing that MCAT to see what mistakes you made.
Another aspect of your second and final month is going to be an integration of full practice question sessions. And what I mean by this is that you're going to take a specific subject like general chemistry, and you're going to be doing 59 questions in 95 minutes. You might be wondering why this number of questions in this amount of time. Well, it's actually because on the real MCAT, every section aside from cars has 59 questions in them, and you have to finish those questions in 95 minutes. So it's really just a simulation of what you would be doing in a specific section of the MCAT, and that's why they're so important. Doing practice questions just lets you test your understanding of the content, and that's why you should be doing at least 1 practice session per day, and you should be focusing on 1 subject for that day.
In addition to these practice sessions, you should also start doing your AAMC questions now. There are a total of 780 AAMC questions that are all very helpful and representative of the actual MCAT. So you need to finish those before the MCAT. So let's just say you worked 6 days a week. You'd have to finish 43 questions every single day until the end of the month. And this will help you a lot for the MCAT. Now this may seem like a lot, but each passage could take up to 7 questions, so you're really only doing 6 passages every single day.
As you continue doing more and more questions, whether that be through U-World or AAMC, you'll start realizing where your actual mistakes are. And this is more of an active learning approach rather than the passive learning that you were doing throughout the first month where you were just doing content review. So now that you know your weaknesses, we'd say that you should write them down. write them down on an Excel sheet, a spreadsheet, so that you can have them all there. And then you could go back to each thing and review it in much more detail so you know you're good with that topic. This is how we eliminated so many of our weaknesses and how we got our score up.
Now I know a lot of people are going to hate this, but this is when you're going to have to start memorizing stuff in terms of content on the MCAT, especially those formulas for chemistry and physics, as well as the amino acid structures. If you remember them, you're guaranteed to get at least like 10 or 15 points on the MCAT for free, just for knowing the formula. So that's why they're so important to memorize. And this is where the other subjects of the Mile Down Anki deck come into play. I'm sure you've been using psychology up until now, but now is when you're going to start incorporating those other subjects. Now I would recommend going through at least a few cards for each subject per day. You're doing at least all subjects every single day, and that memorization skill will definitely improve from there.
Now let's talk about cars. I'm not talking about the movie. I'm talking about the most important section on the MCAT for Canadian medical schools. It's well known that the AAMC practice questions are the most representative of the questions on the MCAT for the car section. So it's essential that you use those questions up that are provided to us by the AAMC during the last month of the MCAT. Do not use them before the last month because they're very precious. So try to use third-party sources before that last month, and then only use third-party sources if you run out during that last month. If you also want to improve your endurance and your timing, try to do 90-minute car sections instead of doing an entire full length. This will definitely ensure that your endurance is up there and your timing is down to the 8 or 9 minute mark.
Let's put this all together and show you what a day might look like. So you start off the day doing some Anki to just warm up, get your mind fresh, and then you move into your full session of 59 questions, whether that be through UWorld or AAMC, and then you can do some cars practice, you could do the 3 passages, or you could do a full test that's timed, and then you could end with some untimed AAMC questions. This is what a typical day would look like in the second month, and I believe this will get you to the score that you're really looking for.
And that brings us to the end of the video. If you found anything helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can make more content for you guys. We have a 3-month study schedule already posted on our channel, so make sure you check that out. And we also have a 1-month study schedule coming up for you guys, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for future videos. Good luck on your studying and goodbye.